Welcome to the channel for another exciting video. Most of the people who watch our videos are not subscribed, so I kindly ask you to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss any new content. Your like is essential for YouTube to understand that this content is relevant, so please like, share, and leave your comment. Now, let's get to the story. Lucas Johnson woke up with the morning sun filtering through the cracks of the car, an old sedan that had seen better days. The smell of gasoline mixed with the residual aroma of fast food made him remember how life had changed drastically. He looked at the back seats, where Clara and Miguel were sleeping, embraced in a peaceful slumber, oblivious to the chaos that their lives had become. The father took a deep breath, trying to find the strength he needed to face another day. The routine, once marked by laughter and play, was now a constant struggle to maintain dignity in the face of adversity. "Come on, little ones," he murmured, trying not to disturb their sleep. "It's time to wake up." He watched them for a moment, his heart heavy, realizing how those innocent faces were burdened with a weight they shouldn't have to carry. Clara, the eldest, began to stir, rubbing her sleepy eyes. Miguel still remained in his dream world, but Lucas couldn't afford to wait. "Clara, can you help your brother wake up? We need to find something to eat," he asked, trying to keep hope alive. The girl nodded and, with a shy smile, started calling her brother. "Miguel, wake up, we have to go." After a few attempts, Miguel finally opened his eyes. What happened to our house, Dad?" he asked, his voice still thick with sleep. Lucas's heart sank at the question. He didn't want his children to know the seriousness of the situation, but he also couldn't lie. "We're still adjusting, son, but we're together and that's what matters." After they got ready, Lucas decided it would be better to go to Millennium Park. The park was a place that always brought a bit of joy and hope, even in difficult times. As they walked, he thought about their situation. The house had been taken by the bank, and he had no idea how to rebuild his life. The feeling of failure followed him like an inescapable shadow. When they arrived at the park, Lucas sat on a bench, watching the people around him. Some families were having fun. Children were running and laughing, and he felt a knot in his throat. "It seems like life goes on for everyone, except us," he murmured. It was then that he noticed a middle-aged man with an enigmatic look and an aura of mystery. The man was by a fountain, observing the commotion with a serene smile. Lucas remembered something his mother used to say: "There's always a chance to start over." Intrigued, he decided to approach. "Hi, I'm Lucas," he said, trying to start a conversation. The man turned, his eyes shining with a silent wisdom. "Henry Carter," he replied, extending his hand. "You seem to know this place well," Lucas commented, trying to make casual small talk. "Yes, I've been here many times, especially when I need some time to reflect. This park has a special energy," Henry replied. "You seem to be going through a tough time, my friend." Lucas hesitated, but the sincerity in Henry's gaze made him open up a little. "I've lost my house. I'm trying to find a way to start over with my kids." He gestured toward Clara and Miguel, who were playing a little further ahead. Henry looked at the children and then turned his attention back to Lucas. "Sometimes, life gives us disguised opportunities. Have you considered that you might be at a turning point?" Lucas shook his head, skeptical. "I don't know. Everything seems so bleak right now." Henry smiled enigmatically. "Sometimes, we need a bit of courage to seek what we want. We all deserve a second chance." Lucas became thoughtful. He had lost so much, but Henry's words resonated within him like a distant echo of hope. "A second chance? Maybe that's what I really need," he thought. Lucas was sitting in his car, the engine off, while Clara and Miguel slept in the back seat. He looked through the dirty window and saw the city of Chicago lit up at night, but the beauty of the city couldn't warm his heart. He felt lost, as if he were adrift in a sea of despair. The weight of the responsibility to care for his children after losing their home crushed him. The idea of looking for a shelter for the night seemed increasingly distant, and the only thing he could think about was how he could provide a better life for the kids. The next morning, after a sleepless night, Lucas decided to take his children to Millennium Park, a place that used to be a refuge for him. As they walked, Clara held her father's hand, her curious little eyes watching the people passing by. Miguel, on the other hand, was quieter, reflecting on what had happened in their lives. Lucas tried to approach the situation lightly, but the pressure in his chest wouldn't ease. It was then that he spotted a middle-aged man standing near a fountain, watching the children play. The man had an enigmatic expression, with gray hair and eyes that seemed to carry stories. Lucas hesitated, but something about that figure intrigued him. The man approached, and Lucas felt a mix of curiosity and distrust. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" the man said, with a smile that reflected wisdom acquired through life's experiences. "You have a lovely family. Cherish these moments." Lucas forced a smile, but the pain of his reality weighed heavily on his heart. "Thank you. That's all I try to do. But times are tough. I know how it is. I've been at rock bottom too," the man replied, with a tone of genuine empathy. "My name is Henry Carter. And you, what's your name?" "Lucas," he answered, still a bit skeptical. "And these are my daughter Clara and my son Miguel." Henry crouched down to be at the children's level. "Hi, Clara and Miguel. If you have a little time, I have some stories that might make you dream." Clara smiled, drawn to Henry's friendly presence, while Miguel watched with a more cautious expression. Lucas, on the other hand, felt an urge to pull his children away from the stranger. But something in the way Henry spoke made him hesitate. "Stories are nice, but we need to get home," Lucas said, trying to keep a firm tone. Henry, sensing the tension, stood up and looked at Lucas. "Sometimes, life gives us second chances, Lucas. You just have to be willing to take them." Lucas shook his head, still unable to believe that there could be any kind of second chance for him. But even so, curiosity began to creep into his mind. Watching Henry help a young homeless woman find food at a nearby diner, Lucas couldn't help but feel intrigued. He noticed how Henry spoke to the young woman, as if he knew her well, and the way she smiled when receiving the help. "He seems to have a good heart," Clara murmured, watching the scene. "Dad, can we help him?" Lucas hesitated. The protective instinct over his children spoke louder, but he also saw something that could be a valuable lesson for them. "Let's wait a bit, Clara. Sometimes it's better to observe before acting." However, Henry's attitude impressed him. He remembered how his own mother used to say that kindness could change the world, and for a brief moment, Lucas allowed himself to dream of a better future. As he approached, he decided to ask Henry about his life. "You've been through tough times too, haven't you?" Lucas asked, finally opening up. Henry looked at him, and his eyes sparkled with a deep understanding. "Yes, Lucas. I was a successful executive, and then everything fell apart. A scandal cost me everything. But as they say, when we lose everything, we have the opportunity to start over, and that's what I want to show you." Lucas felt a chill in his stomach. He wasn't ready to open up completely, but there was something in Henry's voice that made him feel that maybe, just maybe, there was a way forward. "And how did you do that?" he asked, a bit more interested. "I started reconnecting with the things that really matter. Food, family, community. Through cooking, I found a new purpose," Henry said, with a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "And you can too. Sometimes, what we need is just a little push and some courage." Lucas looked at his children, who were playing and laughing carefree, and an idea began to germinate in his mind. He was tired of being a spectator in his own life. If Henry could start over, maybe he could too. "I'll think about it," Lucas replied hesitantly, but with a new spark of hope beginning to shine in his heart. Lucas pedaled his bike through the south side, the wheels spinning rhythmically and smoothly against the uneven asphalt. The bag of homemade meals, which he had prepared with such care, swayed at his side, full of plastic containers that held the flavors of childhood and hope. At every corner, he glimpsed the familiar faces of neighbors who, even in tough times, always exchanged a smile or a word of encouragement. However, the weight of responsibility followed him like a shadow. He was determined to turn this new phase of his life into something positive, but the fear of failure still haunted him. The first delivery was at a modest house, where an elderly woman greeted him with a warm smile. "Hi, my son. What did you bring for me today?" She looked curiously at the containers in the bag. Lucas, feeling an urge to share not just food but also a bit of his story, replied, "Lentil soup, just like my mom used to make. It's comforting, you know?" The woman nodded, her eyes shining. "Your mother's cooking is always a blessing. Thank you, dear." As he walked away, however, Lucas felt a wave of insecurity. He didn't know if he could sustain this new business. What would happen if no one bought his meals? His worries followed him to the next delivery, where a customer in a wealthier neighborhood awaited him. As soon as he arrived, Lucas was greeted by a well-dressed man, arms crossed and a skeptical expression. "You're the one selling homemade food. What is this, a hobby?" The tone of disdain in the man's voice hit Lucas like a blow. He swallowed hard, trying to maintain his composure. "Yes, that's me. I'm trying to start over and offer something good to people." The man looked at the containers, making a face of contempt. "Honestly, I don't know what you expect to sell here. It can't be that good. I'll pass." Those words cut deep. Lucas felt his confidence crumble, and the image of his children, Clara and Miguel, flashed in his mind. He thought about how he was struggling to give them a better future. But before he could respond, he heard a familiar voice behind him. It was Henry, who had approached without Lucas noticing. "Sorry to interrupt, but can you give me a minute?" Henry said, looking directly at the man. "The food he makes has a value that you probably don't understand, but it's exactly the kind of effort we need to support in our community." The customer seemed surprised, not knowing how to react. "And who are you to say that?" "I'm someone who has been in your place, and I know that often the greatest pearls are hidden in the humblest stories." Henry paused before continuing. "The true strength comes from the criticisms we overcome. If you can't see the value in what he's doing, then maybe you are the one who needs to reevaluate yourself." Lucas observed the interaction, feeling a mix of gratitude and shame. When the man finally left, Henry turned to Lucas, who was still dazed. "You saw how he hesitated. He may have walked away, but you can't let negative words define your worth. Keep fighting. I don't know if I can," Lucas admitted, looking at the ground. "Sometimes it feels like everything I do is in vain." "That's how everyone feels at some point, Lucas. The important thing is to get up and move forward. The road is tough, but every step counts. You've already made a significant leap by starting this." Henry smiled, encouraging him. Lucas took a deep breath, feeling the determination reignite within him. "You're right. Thank you, Henry. I will keep going. If not for me, then for my children." As he returned home, Lucas reflected on Henry's words and felt a new spark of hope. He knew that the criticisms and challenges were far from over, but now he felt stronger and more determined to move forward, one step at a time. In the neighborhood park, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky orange and pink. Lucas, with his shirt stained with tomato sauce and a determined expression, was setting up an improvised table with samples of his homemade meals. Clara and Miguel were helping, while the neighborhood kids played around, their laughter echoing in the trees. "Look, Dad, that's Eduardo from school." Clara pointed to a boy approaching with a curious look. Lucas smiled, trying to hide the apprehension he felt. He still remembered the conversation he had with Clara about the bullying she faced at school. The family situation had become the target of cruelly embarrassing jokes. "Hi, Eduardo. Want to try some of what we're making?" Lucas called, trying to sound casual. The boy hesitated but came closer. He looked at the food containers with suspicion, but seeing Clara and Miguel's excitement, he eventually accepted a small plate of rice and beans. "This is good. It's very different from what I eat at home," Eduardo said, surprised. Lucas felt a momentary relief upon hearing the compliment, but his mind was still filled with worries. As more neighbors began to gather, an atmosphere of empathy and support filled the park. Lucas watched as people talked, sharing stories about their struggles. There was an elderly woman talking about the difficulty of paying her electricity bills and a man recounting how he had lost his job in construction. Each account was a drop of pain, but also a seed of solidarity. "This is how we help each other." "Lucas," Henry said, appearing at his side. The mentor had the serious look of someone who knew that those stories could be the first step toward change. When people come together, they become stronger. It's not just about food, it's about building a community. Lucas nodded, but he couldn't help thinking about what was happening with Clara. He saw her in the distance, her expression tied to concern. Hearing a group of girls laughing, Clara distanced herself, and Lucas felt a knot form in his stomach. He wanted to protect his children from any pain, but he knew he couldn't control everything. "I'm going to talk to her," he decided, and Henry accompanied him. You have to be present, Lucas. That is part of what it means to be a father. When they approached, Clara was sitting on a bench, looking sad, avoiding eye contact. Lucas crouched down beside her. "Hi, sweetheart. What happened? You looked so happy a little while ago." "Dad, the girls were talking about our house. They said we're poor and that we can't go back. I just wanted things to be like they were before." Tears welled up in Clara's eyes, and her small body started to tremble. Lucas felt a tightness in his heart. "Clara, I know it's hard, but we're together, and that's what matters. Look around you, see all these people. No one here is perfect, but we're all trying to overcome our difficulties." Henry, who had been listening in silence, decided to intervene. "Clara, I know that pain well. I've been through tough times too, and sometimes people speak without thinking. But the truth is that each of us has a story, and it's that story that connects us. You're not alone." Clara looked at Henry, a little intrigued. "You went through this too?" "Yes," he replied, with a gentle smile. "And that's why I'm here. To help your dad and to show that even in the worst situations, it's possible to find hope and support." Henry's words seemed to have a comforting effect on Clara. She took a deep breath and began to wipe her tears. "Do you really think we can be happy again?" "Absolutely," Lucas said, wrapping Clara in a hug. "We're doing this together, and this is just the beginning. Every small step we take, every dish we serve, is a way to lift ourselves up." The environment around them seemed brighter. The shared stories, the food served, and the growing solidarity were creating bonds that Lucas never imagined could be possible amid the chaos of their lives. And as the sun set, Lucas realized that, despite the difficulties, there was a path ahead, a path he was determined to walk with his family and community. Lucas walked through the streets of the South Side, his worries weighing on him like a dark cloud. The smell of the dishes he had prepared for sale still lingered in his nose, but the joy he had felt while cooking and sharing moments with Clara and Miguel had been overshadowed by a shadow of doubt. The image of Henry Carter, his enigmatic mentor, emerged in his mind. The man who seemed to have answers, who offered Lucas a light in the midst of darkness, was now a question mark. As Lucas passed by a convenience store, he overheard fragments of a conversation between two men. One of them said, "Did you hear about that guy, Henry? They say he was a successful executive until that scandal," with a tone of disdain. The other merely nodded, his eyes lighting up with curiosity. Lucas stopped, his heart racing. He didn't want to believe what he was hearing. Henry couldn't be the man others said he was. He couldn't be someone who had caused pain to so many people. The truth, however, weighed heavily in his stomach. He needed to confront Henry. With determination, Lucas headed to the park where they regularly met. Henry was there, sitting on a bench, watching the children play and the adults talk. The sparkle in his eyes was a mixture of wisdom and sadness. Lucas approached, his heart pounding. "Henry," Lucas began, his voice tense. "I've heard some things about you, about your past." Henry turned slowly, a neutral expression on his face. "What have you heard?" "That you were involved in a financial scandal, that your decisions affected many families, mine included." Lucas couldn't hide the frustration in his voice. "How can you help me if you caused so much pain yourself?" Henry sighed, his gaze drifting for a moment. "Yes, it's true. I made serious mistakes, mistakes that hurt people. I'm not perfect, Lucas, no one is." Lucas felt anger and betrayal bubbling inside him. "Then why are you here? Why should I trust you?" "Because I know what it's like to lose everything," Henry replied, the sincerity in his voice almost palpable. "I know the pain of falling, and I know that rebuilding is a difficult path but not impossible. I'm not here to justify my past. I'm here to help you not repeat the same mistakes." "But you can't just erase what you did," Lucas exclaimed, gesturing with his hands. "How can I move on knowing that you played a role in this?" Henry looked into Lucas's eyes, and for a moment the young father felt a genuine connection. "Do you really believe that I don't care? That I don't feel guilt? Every day, I carry the weight of my decisions. But you, Lucas, have the chance to do it differently. You can be the change I couldn't be." Lucas felt a wave of emotion. He wanted to believe Henry's words, but doubt still consumed him. What if you fail again? What if this is all just an illusion? It's a risk, I admit, Henry said, his tone now softer. But life is made of risks. What will you do with the opportunities in front of you? You can choose the path of revenge or the path of rebuilding. I choose to help if you let me. Lucas took a deep breath, the internal struggle evident on his face. He desperately wanted to trust Henry, but fear paralyzed him. I don't know if I can trust you. How can I move forward if I don't know who you really are? It's true, you don't know me completely, but I can assure you that I'm here to support you. If you decide to move forward, we will do it together. But please, don't let the past define your future. Lucas looked down, reflecting on Henry's words. After a long silence, he lifted his head, deciding that he needed a mentor, even if his motivations weren't clear. All right, Henry, I will continue with my business, but I want you to know that I'm keeping an eye on you. Henry smiled, a smile that carried both relief and gratitude. And I will be here, ready to help you. Let's make this work together. Lucas was at the peak of his journey. His small homemade meal business was starting to take shape and gain attention in the South Side. On a sunny afternoon, while delivering an order of kibbe and potato salad to a regular customer, he couldn't help but smile at the sight of Clara and Miguel playing in the neighbor's yard. The simple scene of his children laughing, forgetting for a moment the difficulties they faced, filled his heart with hope. At home, at the end of the day, as he organized the food containers, Lucas received an unexpected call. It was Carlos, an acquaintance from the restaurant industry who had tasted his meals at a recent event. Lucas, man, you won't believe it. The restaurant Sabre du Sul is expanding, and they are looking for a partner who offers homemade food like yours. Are you available for a meeting tomorrow? Lucas's mind spun. A partnership with a respected restaurant could mean a significant leap in his life. Yes, of course, Carlos. I'm more than available. Thank you for the opportunity. The next morning, nervous, he got ready and mentally prepared himself. As he walked to the restaurant, doubts began to haunt him. What if they don't like what I do? What if it's not what they expect? He shook his head, recalling Henry's words. True strength comes from the criticisms we overcome. Once he arrived, he was greeted by Anna, the restaurant owner, who welcomed him with a warm smile. Lucas, I'm so glad you came. I'm excited to try your recipes. During the meeting, Lucas presented some of his specialties, explaining the origin of each dish. This here is chicken parmesan, a recipe my mother used to make, and this is eggplant lasagna, a recipe I learned to make for the kids. Anna tasted each dish with a sparkle in her eyes. You have an incredible talent, and more importantly, your meals have soul. That's something you don't easily find out there. Anna's compliments flowed, but Lucas was aware that this opportunity could bring a new level of pressure. What if people don't like it? What if I fail? He thought, but he tried to keep his composure. Anna was talking about a possible collaborative menu, and he could only hear Miguel's voice in his mind, asking about their mother. Later, when he returned home, Lucas found Clara and Miguel in the living room, playing a board game. He joined them, and soon the conversation turned to what would happen if his business succeeded. Dad, will you be famous like the chef we saw on TV? Miguel asked, his eyes shining with admiration. Famous is an exaggeration, son, but if I can make people happy with food, that's already a big step, Lucas replied, trying to hide the pressure he felt. Clara, noticing the tension on her father's face, asked, Dad, are you sad? What happened? No, sweetheart. I'm just thinking about how we can make all this work, Lucas said, trying to be optimistic. Later, while preparing dinner, Lucas noticed that Clara was quieter than usual. Clara, what's going on? You seem worried, he asked, concerned about his daughter. It's just that sometimes I miss Mommy. And I wonder if you can manage all this without her, Clara confessed, her voice low but full of sincerity. Lucas stopped what he was doing and crouched down to her level. Look, sweetheart, I miss her too, but we're together, and that's what matters. Let's do our best and take care of each other, okay? Clara nodded, but Lucas could tell that worry still lingered in her eyes. He stood up, determined not to let insecurities overwhelm him. He knew he needed to be a role model for his children, showing that even in tough times, hope and resilience should prevail. Meanwhile, Henry's presence always lingered in his mind. He reflected on the lessons he had learned from his mentor and wondered if he was ready to take the next step in his journey. With the new challenge approaching, Lucas realized he couldn't do this alone, and that solidarity and connection with the community were essential for success. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky orange and pink, as Lucas found himself in the midst of the frenzy of preparing for the big community event he had organized in the South Side. The tables were covered with colorful tablecloths, and the aroma of homemade spices filled the air. He looked around, watching the children play and the adults finishing the last-minute details. Clara and Miguel were helping to set the plates and cutlery, their laughter echoing through the park, bringing a sense of hope and joy to the atmosphere. "Do you think the food will please everyone?" Lucas asked, a bit anxious. "Of course, Dad. Everyone loves your chicken and potatoes," Clara replied with a confident smile. Miguel, on the other hand, was more concerned about the event itself. What if someone doesn't like it? What if no one shows up? He questioned, his expression heavy. "If no one shows up, at least we'll have a good meal together," Lucas said, trying to reassure his son. "But I'm sure many will come. The community needs this." Just then, Henry appeared, with his enigmatic look and an encouraging smile. "You're doing an amazing job, Lucas. The community is already coming together, and that's what matters most." "Thank you, Henry," Lucas replied, feeling a momentary relief. "I just hope everything goes well." As the night progressed, the park began to fill with people. Families, friends, and neighbors gathered, drawn by the promise of good food and a chance to share their stories. Lucas watched with a mix of pride and nervousness as he and his children served the dishes. "Look, Dad. There's a lot of people coming," Clara exclaimed, pointing to the approaching group. Lucas smiled, feeling his heart race. The atmosphere was light, and animated conversations spread throughout the park. However, just as Lucas was about to make an opening speech, a group of law enforcement officers appeared abruptly, interrupting the momentary joy. The tension in the air was palpable. "Excuse me, sir," one of the officers, a man in a dark suit with a serious expression, said as he approached Henry. "We are here to ask some questions regarding Henry Carter. It's important that he comes with us." Lucas felt his heart sink. "What's happening?" as he asked, stepping closer. "We're just investigating some past activities of Henry us," the officer replied, without giving many details. "It's a formality, but it needs to be done." Henry, noticing Lucas's concern, turned to him and said quietly, "Don't worry, Lucas. This won't ruin the event. I'll handle it." "How can you be sure?" Lucas retorted, concern evident in his tone. "You are part of what we've built here, and now this." Henry placed his hand on his shoulder, looking into his eyes. "Sometimes, to move forward, we need to face our past. Trust me." As the officers led Henry to a more isolated corner of the park, Lucas found himself paralyzed. He wanted to run and join Henry, but he also knew he needed to continue with the event. The community was there, and he couldn't let this situation ruin everything. He took a deep breath and turned to the crowd. "Everyone, thank you so much for being here today. This event is about us, about our community and how we can come together to overcome challenges. The food is served, and I want everyone to enjoy it. Let's celebrate together." People began to applaud, and the atmosphere started to change again. The aroma of the food and the music in the background brought smiles back to many faces. Clara and Miguel helped distribute the plates, and soon joy began to spread once more. But the image of Henry, surrounded by officers, still lingered in Lucas's mind. He wanted to believe that everything would be okay, but doubt persisted. While the guests shared laughter and stories, Lucas wondered if the truth about Henry's past could change everything he had built so far. Lucas sat down at one of the wooden tables in the small restaurant where he used to meet Henry. The environment was a bit brighter than usual, but the light couldn't warm the tension that hung in the air. He knew that the conversation he was about to have with Henry wouldn't be easy. The man who had become a mentor and friend had secrets that could change everything. Henry entered, with a pale face and slumped shoulders, as if carrying the weight of an invisible world. When he sat down across from Lucas, the older man's gaze was distant, lost somewhere between the past and the present. Lucas took a deep breath, feeling his heart race. "Lucas, Henry began, but stopped, as if the words had become tangled in his throat. He then looked into Lucas's eyes and, with sincerity, continued, I need you to know that I am not who you think I am. The Chicago worker frowned. What do you mean by that? I trusted you, Henry. You helped me get back on my feet. And that's why I need to be honest. Henry paused, his fingers nervously drumming on the table. The decisions I made in my past, they affected many lives, yours included. Lucas felt a lump in his throat. He had heard rumors, but he never thought Henry would be directly involved in something that could have impacted his family. What do you mean? He asked, his voice trembling with indignation and confusion. What did you do? Henry closed his eyes for a moment, as if recalling a time he would prefer to forget. I was an executive, Al Lucas, one of the best, but ambition blinded me. I didn't realize the consequences of my actions. When the scandal came to light, many families lost everything. I didn't know yours was among them. Lucas felt anger and disappointment bubbling within him. So, you mean that you were behind what happened to my home? To my family? He stood up, his voice loud and trembling. How can you sit here and tell me this? Henry looked him in the eyes, the pain reflected in his gaze. I cannot change the past, Lucas. I can only apologize, and if you allow me, try to make things right now. Make things right, Lucas laughed, a bitter and desolate laugh. And how do you intend to do that? With advice. What could you teach me now? What I can teach you is that life isn't about the mistakes we make, but about how we choose to deal with them. Henry leaned forward, his voice soft but firm. You've done that, Lucas. You got back up after the fall. You started to build something new, not just for yourself, but for your children and your community. Silence settled between them, heavy and full of unspoken meanings. Lucas sat down again, the explosion of emotions giving way to deeper reflection. I don't know if I can forgive you, Henry. This is too much to process. I understand. Henry nodded, the sadness in his gaze almost palpable. But I hope you can. Not just for me, but for you and your children. You've taught them about resilience. Don't let the weight of the past hold back your future. Lucas looked down, observing the marks on the table, the scars of use telling stories of meetings and partings. He thought of Clara and Miguel, how they needed a strong and present father. All right, I can try, but that doesn't mean it will be easy. And I don't want you to think we're okay just because you apologized. Henry smiled, a sad but genuine smile. I don't expect it to be easy. I'm here to help, but the responsibility is yours. I just want to be part of the solution if you allow me. Then let's start over, Lucas said, his voice steadier. But this time, with boundaries. I agree. Henry extended his hand, a gesture of reconciliation representing a new beginning. Let's build something together, but in a transparent and honest way. Lucas hesitated for a moment, but then shook Henry's hand, feeling the strength of determination. There, at that simple table, two men with different stories but intertwined by pain and the chance for redemption, took the first step toward a better future. Lucas looked around, feeling the vibrant energy of the community that had gathered in the heart of the South Side. There was a mix of nervousness and excitement in the air, as he was about to announce a project that could change the lives of many. He climbed onto a wooden crate, improvising a small stage, while the voices of the residents quieted down. The buzz of animated conversations gave way to an expectant silence. Thank you all for being here today, Lucas began, his voice firm but filled with emotion. I'm very excited to share something I've been planning for weeks. Often, we look around us and see the challenges we face. But what if I told you that we have the ability to turn these challenges into opportunities? The crowd murmured in approval, and some began to nod. Clara and Miguel were in the front row, their faces lit up with hope. I want to present to you the Roots Project, an initiative aimed at supporting local entrepreneurs by providing guidance, resources, and a platform for us to grow together. Lucas paused, allowing his words to resonate. I believe that if one of us rises, we all rise. A woman in the crowd shouted, her voice full of enthusiasm. How can we help? Great question. Lucas smiled, excited by the response. We are looking for mentors, resources, and most importantly, your stories. Each of you has something valuable to share. Together, we can create a space where everyone can learn and thrive. As Lucas spoke, Henry watched from the side, his heart heavy. He remembered how he had lost everything, how his selfish decisions had impacted so many lives. He knew he should step forward, but he hesitated. When Lucas finished speaking, applause echoed through the park, and he knew the moment to speak had arrived. Henry climbed onto the stage, unsure, but determined. "Hi, I'm Henry," he began, his voice trembling. "Many of you have heard of me, and I know my past may not be the most glorious, but I'm here because I believe in what Lucas is doing. More importantly, I believe in each of you." The tension in the crowd was palpable, but some began to relate to Henry's vulnerability. "I made mistakes, and I made them big," he continued. "But what I've learned is that true value lies in how we rise after a fall. I want to help, and I hope you'll let me be a part of this." An older man with a skeptical look raised his hand. "And why should we trust you? How do we know you really care?" Henry took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the question. "I can't ask you to trust me, but I can promise that I will be here, day after day, listening, learning, and doing my best to repair the damage I've caused. What matters is what we do from now on." The crowd began to stir, some whispering among themselves, as Lucas seized the moment to intervene. "This is the essence of our project. It's not just about business, but about building relationships, about looking at each other and saying, 'I'm here for you.'" The atmosphere in the park began to change. Some people started to applaud, and soon others joined in, creating a wave of support that swept through the audience. The energy was shifting, and Lucas realized this was a sign that the community was ready to come together. "Let's create a space where everyone can grow," Lucas concluded, taking Henry's hand. "A space where each of us can be heard and help each other. Together, we are stronger." The applause grew more intense, and Lucas felt a wave of hope. He looked at Clara and Miguel, who were smiling, and saw that this was the change he had longed to see. And so, with the support of their community, Lucas and Henry were ready to take the next step, ready to transform lives and build something that could last for generations. Lucas stood in front of a small group of Southside residents, his voice resonating with a mix of determination and hope. He had called the meeting to discuss a social project aimed at providing opportunities for local entrepreneurs, and the room was filled with familiar faces, all with expressions ranging from skepticism to curiosity. It was a sunny day, and the light filtered through the windows, illuminating the modest but welcoming space. "We know our neighborhood faces challenges," Lucas began, looking directly into the eyes of each of them. "But we also know that we have talent and creativity. My dream is that we can transform these qualities into sustainable businesses that benefit all of us." A murmur swept through the room. Maria, a middle-aged woman who sold homemade cakes, raised her hand. "But how can we do this? We don't have resources." Lucas took a deep breath, remembering his own difficult path. "That's true, but we can come together. My idea is to create a support network where we can share knowledge, resources, and even workspaces. Together, we can boost our businesses and help each other." "And who's going to fund this?" asked Carlos, a young man who had tried to open a clothing store but had given up after facing financial difficulties. "No one is going to give us money. I know some organizations that are willing to invest in community projects," Lucas replied. "And we can seek partnerships with local businesses. The important thing is that the initiative comes from us and for us. We will show that the South Side is more than poverty statistics. We are a strong and resilient community." The discussion continued, and gradually, Lucas noticed that the energy in the room was changing. People began to share their ideas and concerns, and a wave of enthusiasm started to take over the group. He knew there was still much to be done, but he felt he was planting the seeds of something great. Later, as he walked through the neighborhood with Henry, Lucas reflected on how their lives had changed. "You know, Henry, I never imagined I would be here, leading an initiative like this. It feels like everything we've been through has brought us to this moment." Henry smiled, admiring Lucas's determination. "You've found your voice, my friend. And more importantly, you've found a way to use that voice to help others. That's what really matters." The conversation continued until they arrived at a small park where the community gathered for a dinner. Lucas looked around, seeing children playing, adults chatting animatedly, and tables full of dishes prepared by everyone. He felt part of something bigger, something that transcended his own struggles. During the community dinner, Lucas climbed onto a small makeshift platform. He held a glass of water, trying to contain the emotion bubbling inside him. I would like to thank everyone for being here today. What we are building together is more than business. It is a legacy of solidarity and resilience. True success is not measured in money or recognition, but in the transformation of the lives around us. Applause echoed through the park, and he saw Clara and Miguel among the crowd, smiling and playing with other children. In a moment, Clara looked at him and waved, and Lucas felt his heart warm. He was doing this for them, for every person who had faced hardships and dreamed of a better future. When dinner came to an end, the conversations continued, and Lucas realized that something had changed. The community was more united than ever, and he had a key role in this process. He smiled, knowing that the journey was just beginning, but that together, they could reach heights that once seemed impossible. So, what did you think of this story? Your opinion is essential for us to improve our content. Write what you thought in the comments and remember to subscribe and like this video. Thank you for your attention, and see you in the next video.